All right, are you ready?
Yeah? This episode is brought to you by Carlisle Tattoo Co. Bold, bright and everlasting. You can find us at 178 Carlisle Street, St Kilda, Melbourne, Australia. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Carlisle Studios. My name is Hal Hunter. I'm here with my beautiful wife.
Oh, I got a nice intro this week. Bella Hunter.
Oh, yeah, Bella Hunter. And our co-worker and friend, Tegwyn Thomas.
Hey, how you going?
First time.
Welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, mate. I'm glad you responded to my text message at 10:30 last night.
Yeah, I appreciate the notice.
Yeah. Well, I was like...
He was laying in bed thinking about you.
No, I was like, fuck, I haven't written any notes for the podcast because we've been recording on Thursdays recently. Today's Wednesday. And I was like, you know what? Let's get ahead of it this week and do the Wednesday. And then I was like, I haven't planned it. And I was like, you know what? Let's get Teggy on, see if he's keen.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm happy to be here.
So how's your week been, Bella?
My week has been good.
Fill me in.
I haven't really done too much crazy stuff, to be honest.
You've been sleeping a lot?
Yep, still sleeping.
Bit lazy?
A lot. Yesterday I did an interesting tat of a orca.
Like a killer whale?
Yep, the whale.
Yeah.
And then a shark going like below and around both knees.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Then...
Well, yesterday was the first day of work, so it hasn't been...
Yeah, I go backwards in my week.
Ah, okay, yep.
You always get confused in this. I don't know why. And then on the weekend, we had a very eventful weekend.
We did.
So...
It was good.
It was like non-stop, and that's so rare for us.
Yep.
But you can go through the weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so I'll leave that bit for you. And then the last day of our working week last week was a great one. I got to tattoo a client who technically was your client at the start, but now we both tattoo him, Jeff.
Ah, yeah.
Who's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's just lovely to chat with when you tat him, but I got to do some fun colour ones, which I hardly ever do colour. And then after that...
You say that every week. Yeah,
Do I?
I got to do colour tat. I hardly ever do
Well,
colour.
it's because I maybe do one colour tat a week, which is hardly any
that's fair enough.
in the
That's
grand
fair
scheme of a week full of tats.
Yep.
And then I got to do on Brandon, who was
He's like your long-term
first
customer.
ever like loyal long-term customer.
Yep.
I've done like all of his front, all of his back and both arms, and you and Bobby have only done like a few tattoos on him each.
Yeah.
Everything else is by me, and we've started on his legs. So we did the skull ring around his kneecap on one.
Yep.
And then we did a ring of thorns.
Thorns. Crown of thorns.
Crown
on
of
the
thorns.
kneecap.
Thank you. I can't think.
Yep.
On the other knee, and that was great. And then the rest of my week is just dog photos, and that's about it.
Fair
Other
enough.
tats.
What about you, Teggy?
Yeah, I had a good week. Obviously it's Wednesday, so going back, started the week last week on Anzac Day.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking Wednesday off for doctor's appointments and stuff, so I put in the extra hours on Anzac Day and did a big day. I do like some spiders, some chains. What else? There's some suits of the cards on some fingers. That was fun.
Wow.
I had Hallie in, Mitch's partner.
Who's yeah.
apprenticing down at Vintique.
Mm-hmm.
We did.
Oh, you posted that this morning?
Yeah,
Or yesterday?
did a little Zippo
Yeah.
Playboy bunny.
Oh,
on
that's
it.
right. She came in and showed me. That was cool.
Yeah, that was heaps of fun. Some more suits of the cards. That was a big theme last week. I did one of those, you know, when you go on holiday and you have those things in America, you put a penny in and it squishes a design into it.
Oh,
You get,
yeah,
a
like
little
those
flat.
The coin makey things.
So I did one of them on
The
someone.
what?
It's like a, I don't even know how to describe it.
No, it's like a pinball-y machine thing,
Yep.
and you put a coin in, like generally a quarter or whatever, because they're usually in America, and it imprints the design of like the location of where you are or something like that in it.
Okay, over the head or whatever that's already on the coin.
Yeah, no, I like squishes it flat, so you get like this little oval thing that's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I did one of them for Honolulu.
Yeah.
The client brought back. So
How
that was
big did
cool.
you do that?
Pretty big. Like
Wait, the machine or the coin?
the coin. The
Okay.
coin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did one of them, which was fun. That was challenging, lots of detail. Some more flash, little Cupid holding an AK-47, which I feel like is a modern classic.
Yes.
I think we've all done a few of them.
I tattooed one on Cody's neck.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, true, he does do
Yeah,
that.
he does. You always forget that he has it.
Yeah. And then Saturday was crazy. I had a realism day, which I haven't had in a long time.
That's right. I booked that one for you, didn't I? You're
yeah.
welcome.
Thank you.
What's the design? You were telling me about it.
Yeah, it's a big samurai. So it's
Yep.
top to bottom of the ribs. Super detailed, just little bits of armor and stuff. And yeah, obviously I don't do heaps of realism.
Yep.
I used to do whatever walked in the door. So I'm happy to take it on. But thankfully this guy's been sitting like a champion for the ribs because...
That's not a good spot.
Nah, we've done 10 hours with a 15 mag. Just,
Oh, fuck that.
yeah. Not
Fuck
fun.
getting that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then what did I have yesterday?
I heard you had a big day yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty much big days at the moment, which is
Yeah.
good. Yeah, yesterday I did one of those babushka dolls, the Russian dolls.
I've got one today.
Bella's got
cool.
Bella
I've also
has
got one on
her
my arm.
Yeah, they always come in waves, don't they?
Yeah.
And what else? I did some big stag antlers.
Oh, nice.
That was fun.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's been good. Lots of flash, which is
Yeah.
So Teggy can do traditional, but you're one of the few artists here who does like not predominantly traditional.
Yeah, I think I'd be the only one right now, right?
Courtney does
Hand
Courtney,
poke?
we've just got
hand poke.
Courtney,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, how would you describe it? I always say it's not fine line, it's like single needle.
Yeah, so I do like if you're coming to get my flash, it's all single needle. I'm obviously happy to tattoo any fine line, any small stuff. But
Yep.
if you're coming to get my flash, I'll use a single needle, black and grey. I'd call it maybe illustrative fine line.
Yeah.
Draw everything. It's not quite realism. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What's
It's hard to explain, isn't
Yeah.
it? But I think you've nailed the head on that.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I've just written weird notes. Hustle weekend.
This is why I left the weekend bit to you because I read your note prior and I was like, oh, he'll go into more detail.
Yeah. Well, we can't go into much detail because I also wrote motivation is back. Not that it was lacking, but I feel like even talking to Bobby, it was like, I feel like we've just been like ticking the weeks over, you know, like nothing new or
You've
whatever.
skipped like right into this. You haven't gone through your weekend at all. You've just said hustle is back. Like, can you use some more descriptive words and sentences, please?
Well, we recorded the podcast last Thursday. Yep.
Correct.
And one of the reasons we started the podcast was I felt like it was easy to just get in the trap of being complacent about just doing tattooing.
Coming to work and just doing your
and you
tats.
just go, oh, okay, I do the tats. And then you go after 6 months, you're like, fuck, like I could have maybe pushed myself to do more than what I've done outside of just tattooing and that would sort of benefit your career as a whole. And I feel like for the last maybe 5 years, me, Bobby and yourself have been doing that. There was always something. I was like, oh, we're playing this or we're trying to work on this, blah, blah, blah. So that's why we kicked off the podcast. And then since we did the podcast, which was like probably November last year,
Yeah.
there's really not been anything additional to just like doing the tattoos each week, which obviously is like the main thing of our career. But
You'd hope that we're at least doing the tattoos each week.
yeah, me and Bobby in particular have always been like, fuck, you don't want to get to the end of your career or get to a point where potentially your career starts to slow down for whatever reason. And you go, fuck, like in the past, I could have done all these things.
I
'cause
had all of these chances for massive opportunities and I
Yeah.
never took it and made something
Yeah.
bigger of it.
So I'm very fearful of being complacent. So last week,
You also love a Bobby pep up.
he did. He
Chat.
came down.
He
'Cause
can
we always
trigger
talk,
you
we
very
always talk
easily.
about like not stupid shit, but just like, oh, we could do this or you could do that. More like business opportunities and stuff.
I would describe you and Bobby as dreamers.
And yeah, last Friday and Saturday, he came down and was like, oh, some of the things we've been talking about, there's progress on them, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, fuck, you know, like This is exactly what I needed to hear. So then on Sunday, we had
Sunday Arvo.
Sunday's like our first day of the weekend. My brother stayed on Saturday night. We went surfing Sunday morning, which is great until I cut my ankle on the rock. And then my parents came down. They were in town.
Yeah, with their doggy.
And then Bobby and his partner Cody, who we call KJ, and their kids all came down for like a big meeting. And if they're coming down to the peninsula, they're like motivated.
It's not very often that Bobby will come down to our house and visit.
2 times he's been.
Yeah, and we've lived there for over a year and a half now.
More nearly 2 years. So, yeah, and he suggested it as well, which made me think like, fuck, he's really keen on this. So that's really exciting. So, I can't actually really go into more detail about it. It'd be premature of me, but, yeah, really, I think there's some good opportunities there. I'm really excited about it. Very excited, if you haven't figured out. Then moving on, we do have shop merch coming soon.
Yes, we do.
I said this the other week.
Which Teggy is a big part of. So he has designed one of the tees and one of the jumpers, and then the other ones were designed by Mickey.
Yep.
And that should be arriving hopefully within the next
2 weeks.
week to 2 weeks.
I think probably more like 2 weeks we'll be getting it out.
That's a bit more realistic.
So, that was actually the first step. Getting the shop merch, Teggy, was like the first thing that got me back into like, fuck, we need to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one. I mean, it's, why not? We got the time.
I know. Yeah. And that's why, because I've always just like, I don't know, merch is on the back burner and stuff, and people always ask about it, but I don't know, we just never pulled the trigger. So
I'm always at you and Bobby saying, we got to do shop merch, we got to do shop stickers, and you guys are like, no, just shut up and focus on your tuts. So finally, you guys are
you're not wrong.
On par with me.
You're not wrong, Bella.
Thank you.
And then, just a normal week of tattooing. I had one notable, they're all notable tattoos, but
watch what you say, Hal.
No, the last tattoo I did on Saturday, which is my last tattoo of the week, on a long-time loyal customer, Cassie, we finished off her armpit. So that was I wouldn't say it's like the funnest tat to do. Definitely not fun for her to get. But that's like one that stuck in my mind because like not a super common spot to tattoo,
No.
So you got a big web with like flowers around it and stuff like that.
I'm like scarred from armpit tattoos because when we were in lockdown and I tattooed your armpit, it was a terrible experience because you were very, very angry at me.
Yep, that's true.
And
I can't deny.
Seeing the way that you acted for your armpit versus the way that Cassie acted.
Yep.
You're a sook.
Well, she used numbing cream. I'll throw her under the bus here. She's got enough tattoos without numbing cream to warrant then like getting
she's
into
bombed.
numbing cream. Yeah. No, she really is. So that was my week. And now we'll move on to Teggy. First time on the podcast.
First time, debut.
I know. Such an honour. Such an honour to have you. And you're probably thinking the same about just an honour to be on here. Yeah.
Obviously.
Absolutely.
How'd you get into tattooing?
I was always making art as a kid. The first time, I think, I tell this story a lot. The first time I said I wanted to be a tattooer, I think I was 13.
Yeah.
I got my first sort of average, very not good tattoos at 14.
What were they?
I got some writing on my stomach. I got some...
Is that the shit down the bottom?
Yeah, which... Don't get tattoos when you've still got 2 feet of growing to do, because that does not say what it used to say. There's spaces where there wasn't, and got to get that one removed.
I reckon you should keep it. It's the best
I actually
thing.
couldn't, when you showed it to me, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a bit of writing. It says "Follow your bliss," which is a senses fail quote, because I was quite the edgy teenager. And now it says "Follow your bliss." There's a couple extra.
There's a big like space in there.
Yeah, because I was probably 4'5" when I got it tattooed. So I started getting tattoos really young, way too young. Most of them are gone now, covered up, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I got my first professional tattoos, I'd say, at 18 from a guy named Benny Churcher, who used to work at No Regrets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd kind of gone off the idea of being a tattooer. I think pressure from my parents, they're pretty religious Catholic school and all of that. Tattoos not looked too kindly on. So I had come around to the idea of going to uni to be a teacher. And I'd actually started that process, but I got my first professional tattoo by Benny, and it was just like magic. Like when you don't understand how tattoos are done and you walk out with like a really nice finished professional tattoo and it's better than you could have imagined, it blows your mind. You're looking at it for the next 2 weeks like, wow, what is this? How did they do this? And I just knew I had to figure out how to do it. So I went about starting to pursue an apprenticeship. I was in the middle of year 12. I was already on the path to uni. I started painting flash pretty much every day. Not long after getting tattooed by Benny, I started to get tattooed a lot by a guy named Nathan Murphy, who I actually went to high school with. He's currently working down at Hen's Teeth, but at the time he was at the shop I ended up apprenticing at, which was Irizumi in Elstonwick. And then I started getting tattooed by Bobby as well. So Bobby was probably the most receptive to me asking questions about tattoos. And
he indulges it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's like, you could just do it.
Yeah.
You could definitely do it. And at the time, everyone was telling me it was crazy. Like Bobby was the first person in my life who really said, no, this could happen.
Had more of a positive impact on the conversation.
And not that Nathan wasn't supportive. Benny was about to quit tattooing.
Yeah, he quit.
Did quitting me. So his advice to me was always, don't do it. But yeah, Nathan was more of a quiet guy, just a bit more reserved, and Bobby was very, very excited by the idea. So I started bringing Bobby lots of paintings, and to say the least, they weren't good. And
That's even better though.
Yeah, they're
bad. Memorable.
I remember trying to do traditional with like 0.05 fine liners, so really thin lines and wrong paints,
fine
and
line
wrong
traditional,
colours, and it'd be a full rainbow in there. I'd use every colour available.
Watercolor spec.
Watercolor traditional.
Much. I actually think it was using a $4 set of watercolors I got from the $2 store.
The little hard ones. You got to put the water on them.
Yeah, that's it. And bringing Bobby paintings for about 6 months, and he kind of said to me, look, these aren't getting better. And he pulled me into the back room at Vintique and just drew a rose really quickly and showed me his painting process start to finish. And that was a real turning point. Once I had just watched someone do it, because at that time there wasn't a lot that you could look up. There was
not necessarily like YouTube tutorials or anything like that. Like there is now.
Yeah, there was nothing, to tell you the truth. I remember this one guy who had YouTube videos, and looking back on them, they weren't great either, which is probably why my painting wasn't improving much.
It would have just been like those inked mags and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was it. Tattoos Down Under.
Yeah.
All of that. And they were sort of on the way out anyway. Instagram had just started to become a thing. So there was lots to look at.
Yeah.
But not anything instructional, which is pretty different these days.
Yeah.
I think you can find answers to most of your questions online now. So yeah, Bobby kind of showed me how he painted, and I went away and took that on, and I started to really apply that, and the paintings improved almost immediately. At the time, Bobby and Scott had just taken Hal on as an apprentice, so there wasn't room to apprentice at Vintique, and Bobby was quite honest about that. You were pretty locked in there for a couple of years of your apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Snuck in before me. No. But
lucky timing.
That's it. But I ended up, I got a counter job at a small studio in Cheltenham, which is still there, called Joy of Ink. And that taught me a lot. It was just running the counter, running the emails, running the shop. Eventually, I wanted to pursue, obviously my interest at the time was traditional tattooing, and there wasn't a lot of information at that shop about traditional tattooing. They sort of very, very old school street shop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do whatever walks in the door, lots of script, stuff like that. And I didn't think I was going to sort of gain the knowledge there that I wanted to, so I moved on from there pretty quickly and got into an apprenticeship under Woody at Irizumi, which I had already been tattooed there by Nathan, so that was a bit of an in there.
Yep.
Nathan had moved on at the time, but he was very encouraging. He said, yeah, just go talk to Woody. He'll give you a job. And sure enough, he did. I walked in with my portfolio, and Woody wasn't there, but a guy named Dan, who is now one of my best friends. You can find him at Fortunate Dan. He works at Inky's Tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
He was working the counter and he grabbed my portfolio and looked through it and said, I remember he was a really staunch guy at the time, which is ridiculous. He's a teddy bear, but
It's always the way.
Yeah, he had a shaved head, lots of piercings. He was in the Fred Perry with the Doc Martens, and I was like terrified. I was like, "Who is this guy?" And he flicked through my portfolio and goes, "Oh, the boss doesn't like traditional," and that was all he said.
Oh God.
So I was like, "Oh, great,
Very inviting.
all right, not good." And then he was like, "Come back tomorrow. The boss is in." And I was very keen and I wanted them to know that. So I left my portfolio there so they would know I would be back. And that way Woody could just have a flick through it in the morning.
That's quite smart.
Yeah. I mean, it just gives you an in. You have
to
you
show
have to
up
go
you
back
again.
have to
pick
show
it
up
up.
again. And I showed up the next day and Woody looked at it and said, "Yeah, I don't like traditional." So I was like, "All right, I know that."
I've been informed.
Yeah. But you can start Wednesday. And that was it. I was off and I started my apprenticeship. And Woody, very old school tattooer. He started in the late 90s, early 2000s at a shop called Smart Ass, which if you were around in that time, you probably know of that shop. It had a pretty good reputation. And he very much had that old school work ethic. So it was scrubbing tubes, mopping floors. It was a very traditional apprenticeship. Lots of old information that maybe a lot of apprentices these days don't get exposed to. So I'm very grateful for that. And that was it. I started tattooing. I started pursuing traditional full time. I really wasn't.
You were allowed to.
Yeah, I really wasn't trying to do anything else. And Woody was happy with that. He was, happy to do the walk-ins and leave me to do my thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a really good environment. And Dan was there. He was an apprentice. I later found out he was the other apprentice, and we developed a really good relationship where we bounced off each other and grew off each other a lot, and still do to this day. We still get together and paint, and so that was the start. And that was it. Off to the races.
Nice.
And how long have you been tattooing for now?
I think this year. I mean, it's complicated, I guess, because of COVID and
I just include the COVID years.
Yeah,
we lived through it.
Well, you lived them, so
I think I think if we include everything, 7 years ago this year, I would have done my first tattoo. So it's been a while.
Yeah,
A big style change in there. Obviously, I don't do traditional anymore.
yeah.
which is crazy
So
because
what,
some of your
like-
old paintings are at Vintique. They're not even old. They're from like a few months ago.
Well, a few years ago.
No, there's recent ones.
Nah, yeah.
Oh, really?
I do
Yeah.
occasionally still paint some. There's 5
And
new
they're so
ones. I
good.
We
painted
always
last
say that
month.
it's like your paintings are like some of the best traditional ones we have on the walls.
That's what I was
Yeah.
just going to say. Like, it's crazy that you don't do it because they are so good and so clean. And every time we're
you
at
clocked
Morty,
traditional. You're like, fuck this. I'm gonna do something else.
yeah, I'm better than these pussies.
I do think I was a good painter. And
You are a very good painter.
You are.
full credit to Bobby for that because he taught me. I don't think I ever really got there on my application, and that has a lot to do with the shops that I've worked in. There wasn't a lot of traditional influence in them. There wasn't a lot to bounce off.
Yeah, it's hard to learn it if there's no one else that you can like watch and be guided by.
Yeah, traditional's a craft, I think, and there's a very specific approach to take to certain types of traditional, and if you don't have anyone to show you that approach, I think it can be a real challenge to get going.
Yeah.
You see that a lot with apprentices that work in the right shops. They know what equipment to use right away. They know what size
That's
their
it.
lines should be, things like that.
Even guys who are working in shops that don't really have like a specialty style, and then they move to a shop that's like, say, specializes in traditional, and you can see almost like immediately it's like
It's
just like a few
improvement.
little things, that they figure out or they get told, and there's this huge improvement, in the application of traditional.
Yeah, I think, it really is a learned set of skills, and it's so much easier when that's passed down to you.
Yeah.
I didn't really have that, and I struggled to learn traditional application. I think I got there in the end. I think I was very proud of the sort of traditional tattooing I did towards the end of my apprenticeship. But I also unexpectedly had a real change in interests in my apprenticeship. I never ever thought I would be pursuing fine line tattooing. It took me by surprise. It took pretty much everyone who knew me by surprise. I think if you'd known me before that, I was the penultimate traditional apprentice. I was the bold will hold guy. I had all the sayings, I was the stereotype of traditional tattoo apprentice. Little, dickies and t-shirt tucked in and keys on my belt. I did it all. But fine line tattooing in my apprenticeship kind of just found me in the end. I remember Woody had this big stack of old production flash, lots of national stuff. And amongst it all was a bunch of flash by Carrie Barber, who was a female tattooer, still is a female tattooer, in San Francisco in the 70s. I think she worked all over the place. But she, along with Jack Rudy and another guy named Good Time Charlie, sort of kicked off fine line in the 1970s. And I found her flash and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And from there I just became obsessed. I started looking at a lot of the fine line contemporaries that were working in Melbourne, because Melbourne was quite well known for its fine line, and it looked like another challenge to kind of pursue and learn, and I went headfirst into that.
Well, that's the sort of the thing, like, I was struggling to explain, is because, like, it's technically fine line, but I always have in my mind when people say fine line, it's like, and I know you still do some of this stuff, but it's like tiny little bits of lettering or like really small stuff. But I think you
think of fine line what it used to be when you were
just like
younger.
When fine line became more popular here. But it's like true fine line is like still like almost traditional designs in a way.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
just applied like with a thin line.
Yeah, fine line really, it was developed in the 70s and 80s. And if you want to go back further, the first traditional artists used single needles and tattooed very fine designs. You can go look at people like Sutherland MacDonald, who was a tattooer in Britain in the 1800s. And his work looks like something that would come out of a studio in a Melbourne fine line studio today. It's, single needle outline, black and grey shading with grey wash. That's in the 1880s.
Yeah.
So it has a long history, but it's not as well known as traditional. In the 70s and 80s, you had sort of Mexican culture in LA that really, they started to really get around fine line tattooing, and that's where you get the cholo style of tattooing. East LA, black and grey, Jack Rudy style. So it has a history, and that's definitely separate from those little bits of script and stuff. And that's more what I'm interested in. I don't do designs that sort of come from that Chicano culture. That's not, I'm not super interested in that because it's not my heritage, but that's definitely my influence in terms of application.
Yeah, nice. I really do like it. I actually do want to get some. I just never have.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had a couple,
well, you
but
work just down the
now.
road, so I could be getting it.
Yeah. Well, you had a couple off Dan, but they're...
No, that's true, actually. I did. I had the one from Dan.
Yep. And I've got the little cactus that Teggy did on my leg.
The cover up.
Yeah, the cover up of when I tried to hand poke myself. Fail.
Yep. So after you were at Irizumi.
Yep.
With Woody, and then what's your pathway been to essentially be where you are now, which is working at CTC Private, which is just down the road?
Yeah, so from there I went to a shop called Good People Tattoo in Ormond. That's an awesome little shop. It's still there. Some great artists there, Reverend Ben, Fiona Fioski on Instagram. They're still kicking. And that was an awesome environment. Just really young crew. All of us in our mid-20s, just pushing really hard on the art side of things.
Yep.
From there, I'd say is when I really focused and nailed in on a style. I'd started to do some fine line at Irizumi, but I hadn't really nailed down what it was that I wanted to pursue about fine line. And when I got to Good People, it became really clear to me. It was all about reduction, so traditional is like, it's a pursuit of like a simplification of the art out of necessity, right? So you take needles, pigment, lines, shading, and you make something that it's still clear what the image is, and you do it as economically as possible. And that's because of things like pain, time. You got a line of sailors out the door. And for me, single needle was an extension of that. It's like a further reduction, right? You've got one needle, one color, and you're still pursuing the same thing, which is displaying a clear image. And good people, that was really my focus, and I was really encouraged by the guys there. There was another fine line tattooer by the name of Boo, who's over at Corner Store now.
Yep.
And him and I together really focused in and nailed on that reduction, and we worked really hard to sort of pull our tattoos back as much as possible. And I think that's where I really got to the development of my style, was at that shop.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked there with those guys, and really we all pushed and developed our own individual styles and bounced off each other, and it was really great. Then lockdown hit, and it got hard. There wasn't a lot of work on. It was a real challenge. I needed to take another step forward, so I reached out and applied for a job at Grey Street Tattoo, working for Evan Griffiths.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know Evan, you know he's one of the best tattooers in the world. Really,
definitely
world-class tattooing. And that was the next step for me. And it was sad to leave Ormond, and I'm still really good friends with all of those guys. But moving to Grey Street took it to the next step for me, and that was where I sort of think I really had to sink or swim.
Yep.
In terms of making it a full-time career that was, reliable, and there was a bit of pressure, and when you're in a room full of tattooers like that, you sort of just have to perform. So that was what that was about for me, and I had a really great time there and did a lot of development there. Just watching Evan work is, it's something special that I'll always be thankful I got the chance to do. But then again, more lockdowns hit, more challenges.
Never ending fucking lockdowns we have.
So from there, I think I sort of started to have some mental health problems, like a lot of people in lockdown.
Yep.
Those became quite serious, and the pressure was just on at Grey Street in terms of just the sheer volume of work and the quality of work that those guys put out. There's really no room to take your foot off the gas. So I sat down with Evan and I said, look, this is what's going on. I'm having sort of these mental health challenges. I've been in psychiatric facilities because it's been so bad.
Yep.
I need to take some time off, and I know that that's not what you want. I know that's not fair on the other guys because of how hard they push. And I just need space to sort of take my career at my own pace for a while.
It was just something that was detrimental to your health that you have to do.
Yeah.
It's like a non-negotiable.
Totally. And I think that was a tough decision, but ultimately became one of the best decisions I've ever made, because what it led to was me reaching out to Bobby and starting working at Vintique, which was a really full circle moment, because when I started tattooing, my whole goal was to work at Vintique. And Bobby really gave me that space to step back and work as much or as little as I needed to. And it really didn't take long to get back into the swing of things. It was maybe a month or two and I was back tattooing full time. And it's been all go from there. Obviously the move to Carlisle, and just loving it.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, I was sort of like, it was one of those things like, because it was pretty much like, it would have been around the same time that you started at Vintique was when I started going back there like one day a week with Bella.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why like we still try and work down there one day a week. And I'm always like, it's I think it's such a, like not a weird experience, but like I find it quite wholesome to still be able to tattoo in the shop that like when you first got into tattooing was like the shop that you wanted to work at. And
well, you started there, and then because you took me on as your apprentice, I also started there.
Yeah. And Cody started there. And I remember when I did both your knees, I webbed both your knees. Like, fuck, I can't imagine how painful that would have been for you back then.
That was one of the worst.
Heavy-handed hell.
I actually saw the photos the other week. I've still got the photos of when I did them and stuff on there. I always forget that I did them. But no, that's good. So moving on from like your, I guess, a pathway in tattooing and stuff, do you have any, like, you don't have to, I'm just always interested. And I guess that's one of the benefits of doing the podcast and stuff is like when I got to talk to Stevie and all the other guys here is like you just get to ask him shit that like it would be weird if I came up and just asked you in like normal
you're back
life.
in the stencil room and you're like, hey.
Yeah. So I guess like firstly it's like, do you have any sort of short, medium, long-term goals with your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I came into this year thinking that I really needed a 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm very locked into establishing a consistency. I think getting used to a routine and a level of pressure that I can handle, obviously with those previous issues. I want to find the sweet spot, which I think all of us are searching for. How
definitely.
much can we tattoo? How much can we fit in before it's too much?
You reach your limit.
Yeah. And I think this year has been really good for that. I think there's been a consistency there that hasn't been there in previous years in my tattooing career. And now I'm sort of at a point where I'm thinking about what's next. So short term, more flash, which I think is every tattooer's short-term goal. I think we could always all be drawing more flash. Medium term is to start looking at larger projects. So up until now, my focus has sort of been the palm-sized tattoo, and I feel like I've got a really good grip on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's many things that a client could ask for that would really stress me out in terms of the drawing side of things, even if there's application that's stressful, like we all have, certain spots are harder to tattoo.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I don't think there's a palm-sized tattoo that you could throw me anymore. So now it's really on to moving to larger scale. So that's the midterm goal. Next year, start to push more back pieces, things like that.
Yep.
And long-term goals is, I don't know, I've talked about owning a shop one day. I've talked to Bobby a lot about that and whether or not that's a possibility. And I think if I can bring the consistency short term and sort of grow that, then that'll be the next step for me. I'm pretty locked into Melbourne, so quite happy tattooing here. I think it's one of the best tattoo scenes in the world. So
yeah, I agree.
5 years, 10 years, sort of looking at potentially making my own little mark on it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there something that you wish you had done or could do better with your career?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the switch up in styles when I did transition from traditional to fine line, I think I could have handled that a bit better. I think if you were following me at the time, it was quite dramatic. It
Very
was
confusing.
One day I was posting, I think it was like a knee web, a prisoner of love, and then the next day it was like, oh, I do single needle now. And I think if you want to change styles, it can be a challenging thing. And ultimately, I'm glad I did it when I did it because I didn't have a super large client base. And obviously, the larger your client base gets, the harder it does become to change up your style.
Yep.
You've got, uncompleted work and things you've got to finish and projects you've started. And it's not super ethical to just say, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
pick up and leave that work behind.
So if any of my old clients want traditional, I'm still more than happy to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's an easy ship to set sail on, but it's a really hard ship to turn once it's going. So I definitely could have handled that a bit better and slowly introduced the fine line and developed it slower, more on the side, and then brought that over. And if you're considering a style change, I think that is the way to go because you'll also get a chance to test it out for yourself. But I was pretty gung-ho. Like it was when I did the first couple single needle tattoos I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So I was pretty sure that that's what I wanted to pursue. Yeah, and the other thing is just be super true to yourself and what you want to do. I think early on when I started pursuing fine line, I was a little bit too caught up in what my contemporaries were doing, and I came from that real traditional head mentality of like, we all share designs and we all put stuff out there, and I was looking at what they were doing and sort of just taking too much from that.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I had a really good conversation with another tattooer where I thought, well, what do I like? What is my unique voice in tattooing? And that's why, and what led me to doing so much country and western stuff.
Yep.
I was living at the time in a place called Nuji up in Gippsland, which is like cattle and potato country. And I was a big fan of a lot of country music and western stuff, which, sort of came from a lot of time in America when I was a kid, and particularly Arizona. And I started to draw that kind of stuff, and it came a lot easier and it was a lot more unique to me. And I think it lent something specific to me that made me stand out for like what I'm doing, like.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't sort of just want to be, you don't want to be the person that just like you can go get a tattoo from that you could get anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
You want to have something unique to sell, something unique to offer. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing, is just find your unique voice and don't get too caught up in what your contemporaries are doing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of young artists do get way too caught up in the idea of finding their own style way too early into like their apprenticeship. Like, they're painting flash and they're like asking questions. Well, how do I get my own style and how do I know? And I'm like, do not even think about that right now. Like,
Well, I was thinking it just comes, like it just comes.
yeah, like just get the fundamentals of application of your paintings and then the application of your tattoos to be as good as you can get. And then you'll notice that you're adding your own flair to it and all of that.
Yeah, you kind of have a natural hand and a natural eye. Like if you drew it, it's going to look like you drew
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think sometimes people assume we're making very deliberate decisions on
No.
style. And it's much more
It just
subconscious.
happens.
It's, I've got a deadline, I've got to draw this. Okay, it's on paper and
That
I
looks
drew
good
it.
and
Yeah.
it's happening.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
No, exactly. That's it. And, like when we talk to the young guys here and stuff, it's always the same. It's like they all do their own thing pretty much now, but I'm always like, just draw it, and like eventually it will become like that's just the way you draw, And if you have like a good enough knowledge and ability and stuff, you can replicate other people's styles to make your styles look like that. But I think like at the core of it, like the way I draw is just the way it naturally comes. The way Bella draws is the way she draws. I could sit there and it was probably when I was teaching Bella to tattoo, that's probably one thing
You really struggled with.
I do differently now. Is like I was like, no, I draw it differently. So like you need to draw it differently.
Yeah. So when you were teaching me, the thing that we struggled with the most, and I say we because it was you teaching me and I had to absorb what you wanted. And I say that in the nicest way possible. But you would really, really hound me and being like, no, that's not exactly how I've shown you to do it. And I'm like, well, I can't understand why you're doing something that way. And I think I had the balls to say that to you because, one, we'd been together for many years.
Yeah.
But if I was just your apprentice in a shop environment and I didn't live with you and wasn't in a relationship with you, I would have just done exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Which was good and bad in many situations. But it was really hard for you to be like, well, why aren't you shading it this exact way? And I'm like, I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Well, I know that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now he'll only tell me if like something is actually wrong. Like
Yeah, if there's like an error in the drawing.
yeah, if like I'm missing an eyeball or something.
Yeah. All right. Quick question. This is from Brian NG. He's got, I don't know how you do this on Instagram, but how you can get like a different font for your name.
Yeah.
So he's got Old English and it's really hard to read. So
Yeah.
that's why I had to like zoom in on it then. You can't see, obviously. I'm
No,
just
every
talking,
time I read a DM from him or something, I'm like, oh, what does it say?
Yeah.
Because it's small.
I'm going to rephrase this quickly. So other than your mentors and colleagues, who are some of your favorite tattoo artists today and who have been the biggest influences on your style? Teggy.
Yeah, I think I take a lot of inspiration from tattooers of the past. So for me, it's very easy to come back to Jack Rudy, who sort of pioneered fine line tattooing. I think, and he's still around. You can go listen to some podcasts and stuff he's been on. He's a very insightful guy. Obviously there's contemporaries that do things very close to what I do that I look at. So Clean and Pristine on Instagram. He's an incredible tattooer who also does Western fine line stuff. Really, really amazing. Check him out. He's done some cool stuff with Passport and he's had some cool exhibitions. Other than that, I look at a lot of traditional tattooers because ultimately that's where I come from, and I love the traditional work ethic and I love traditional subject matter. So I'm looking at the same guys most of the people in the shop are, you know, Bert Crack and the Smith Street guys, and Ed Hardy, and yeah.
That's awesome. Bella's walking off. I was about to ask her
goodbye.
who hers were. Charles was just unwrapping fucking stickers that covered in bubble wrap, and it's making noise, so Bella went to tell him to shut up.
Yeah, I was politely saying, shut the fuck up,
Charles's first
Charles.
day at work this week, today, Wednesday. He was sick.
Yeah.
You reckon?
Speaking of that traditional work ethic.
Yeah.
Got the sniffles, mate. No, just you. We're all here every day. We sleep here.
Bella, favourite tattoo? Or do you want me to go? Have you thought about it?
I have thought about
Go
it,
for it.
and mine changes very frequently. But one who I will always go back to is Austin Maples. Always go back to him.
He does it too good. Almost too good, I'd say.
It is. It is too good.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
Look, there was a first photo that came up on my Instagram this morning when I got on my phone. And, I almost didn't post a photo after that.
Yeah, well, I didn't post one this morning, so there you go. He got to me. Now, I will always go back and look at his stuff and just be like blown away at how good he is and the application and just his own style. And do you know what? I really, really love his YouTube tutorial videos.
Yeah, he hasn't posted a video in like a year, but
it's been but I reckon I've gone back and rewatched like the same ones like 3 times.
they were done really well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you did say that last time. So my always like go-to is a Chad Coplinger. Don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but I'll keep
People either say Coplinger or Capolinger.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to keep saying it how I say it
Until you
someone
meet
corrects
him
me.
and he can tell you.
Yeah, so Chad, Dan Santoro used to work at Smith Street, now has a shop a little bit away from there called American House. I really like what he's done with that shop. Really cool. I love Dan's style. He was there's a Vice series on YouTube called Tattoo Age. It's been on like SBS and stuff here, but
I reckon you've watched it 20 times or more.
more. I used to just put it on every day at work.
Yeah, on
I
repeat.
think it's like a 3-parter. I love it. I could tell you every single thing about it. I was lucky enough to get tattooed by him a long time ago now in New York, so that was cool. Austin, definitely up there as well. Simon Earl,
Yeah.
New Zealand bloke, tattoos in the UK at the moment.
You got one on your neck, buddy?
Yeah,
Is
he
that
did
right?
my throat.
X.
Yeah, I love like his stuff's like thinner than what I do and stuff like that, but I love just his drawing ability, you know, like fully involved pieces, like with no skin showing and stuff like that. Or like there obviously is skin showing, but like
Minimal.
fully backgrounded and stuff. Like just his ability to sort of compose them and stuff I really like. And then I guess like a more recent one I've seen, and I cannot pronounce this name at all, so bear with me while I read it. I can't.
Give me
I
a
don't even
go.
want to try and attempt it.
Oh, wow. Cocuisinamo. I can hear the boys in the back room laughing at
I
us.
think we can assume
So
we got that wrong.
They work in Tokyo, and it's
Do they?
well, that's what it says.
Show me.
Oh no, sorry, they're in Tokyo for a few days. It's COQUE space SIN space AMO. So Kokyu Sin Imo.
Yeah, and
I'm so sorry, Kokya.
I think the first tat I saw of his was these 3 Japanese, like traditional applied Japanese back pieces that he did. And yeah, I think I always look at that stuff and I'm like, fuck, I would love for my tattoos to look like that. Predominantly sort of color stuff that he does. I'll show you, Teggy.
Yeah, wow. Very traditional application.
Yeah. And I just keep seeing his stuff pop up, and some of the stuff, it's like, I think the things that I like about it is like I'm not going to post it, but I'll show you, is like this sword with a dragon going around it, and it's like there's literally fuck all black in that tattoo.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like,
it's rare that you like
that's so different to
tattoos.
how I would apply it, because I would never not put the black in, but I think it looks so good.
Well, it's very rare for you to like tattoos with minimal black, because generally
Yeah.
you like them to be quite heavy and dense.
So yeah, really big fan of his work, and I also am a really big fan of how it heals. He posts a lot of healed photos, and I think that's
It shows a lot more.
as a customer, I always think, you know, if you're looking to get a tattoo from someone and all that, if they post a lot of healed photos, I think that shows like a confidence in their ability to do the tattoo, and it's going to look how it looks in the fresh photo. So that's always something that I like. It's not just specific to him, but
I really like when tattooers post healed photos.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, you're buying the healed product.
Yeah,
you're not buying the
You're not
fresh
buying
tattoo.
a fresh, crispy tattoo, because it looks like that for a few weeks, and then
Yeah, and like people you can fucking edit them and do all this different shit, you know, and like, but
once
yeah,
it's healed, that's what it looks like forever.
yeah, and I think
Unless you're Teggy's first tummy tattoo.
What was that?
the one you've got,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
not the one you did, the
Unless
one
it's
you've
that
got.
one.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said.
That's different. You were 14.
You should send it back to him and be like, hey man, is it meant to look like this?
Yeah, Nathan, explain.
Anyway, that was pretty much all I had to go through, Teggy, but thank you for coming on.
That's all right. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and if you're around when we're doing it more, feel free to jump in and ask questions or come up with some stuff that's going to embarrass us on here.
Yeah, we like that. But also, Teggy's tattoo knowledge and like history of the tattooing world is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So people who have questions about that, DM them to him, not us.
I'm a big history nerd.
You are a history
You are.
buff. It's
we get
wild.
a lot of questions like that, you know, like about like the intricacies of like tattoo history and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm not that guy. I'm not confident enough to answer
No
that
way.
shit.
So we'll direct them to you, or people can ask us and we'll get Teggy to answer it, and we'll take his answer so we sound really smart.
Teggy's like the brains trust. We'll get him
Yes.
on.
It is nerve-wracking though, because you know you're going to get something
Yeah.
wrong. Like,
Oh,
it's not
100%.
well-documented history, so you always know you'll say something wrong, and you'll have 30 tattooers.
Yeah,
comment
someone's going to
underneath.
pull you up on it.
Yeah,
Like the
That's
other
why
week
I
when
have
I
no
said
comment.
Ireland was in the UK.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like just like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I've never been there, so don't hate me. Don't judge me.
Okay. Well,
All right.
thank you very much for coming on the potty, Teg.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks again, Hal, for running the show.
That's all right.
And thank you, everyone, for listening yet again to another episode.
Yep.
I think this is what, episode
18.
18.
Yeah.
Wow.
But just quickly, Teggy, what's your Instagram?
Oh, just at Tegwyn Thomas. I'll spell it out because I got a weird name. Tegwyn Thomas THOMAS.
And if that was too hard for anyone to write down or hear, you can find him through the Carlisle Instagram page. All
Yep.
of the artists are tagged
Definitely.
in there. But thank you very much. Like, follow, subscribe,
And rate.
rate. Get us to the 5 stars again.
I know, 4.9. It's bloody embarrassing.
I know. We'd
All right.
better quit.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
This episode is brought to you by Carlisle Tattoo Co. 178 Carlisle Street, St Kilda, Melbourne, Australia.